All right, again, good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me wait a few minutes. Got a few more people coming in. All right, good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. All right, while we're waiting for people to come in, please go to Canvas and read the section on what is water pollution. I'm going to look at that today. What is water pollution? We have that and one other unit in this module to complete. Which means probably by next Wednesday, we'll test this module. So we'll try to wrap it up today, review it on Monday, and test on Wednesday. Next week, they're on a modified schedule because Friday there's no school for you guys next week. It's a work day for us. Ooh. Keep getting in. Actually looking at the length of the next unit. We may not get to the test until the following week. And that week you have a holiday too. So you guys have a 4-day weekend next week. We don't. All right. So again, if you just came in, good morning. Where everybody's in Canvas looking at the what is water pollution unit. As soon as I think everybody's in, I will Uh, let's take the next 10 minutes for you to read that section. And I have a short video to show you on water pollution. And then we'll go through the ones that are on the page. All right, good morning. If you just came in, we're in Canvas in the unit, What is water pollution? Okay. I think almost everybody is here. Yes, it is finally warm. Yes, indeed. For a while. Enjoy the warmth because I was watching the news. The temperature's going to drop back down next week in the 50s. So it's not going to be as wonderful as this week. It's going to make the plants crazy because they don't know whether to bloom or not to bloom. All right. So like I said, I think most people are here. Let me take a quick list of who is not and give you another 5 minutes to look over that section. Then I have actually two short videos to share with you. Some folks look like they're still trying to come to class. All right, so I should see everybody in Canvas. I am looking at Go Guardian and I don't see everybody in Canvas. Y'all log in and then you don't really come to class. Everybody should be in Go Guardian under what is water pollution. Okay, gotcha. We are in Canvas under the unit, what is water pollution? And some days you wake up and you're not sure what class you're in. It's easy to log into the wrong class. All right, I'm still looking at folks who looking at other things. All right, and I have a list yay long, folks, of people whose assignments are missing and grades are terrible. So you don't have time to be looking at anything other than environmental science while you're here. Again, please stay current, stay in this class and do this class's work while you're here. I shouldn't see anybody idle. Everybody should be logged into the Canvas page. Okay. All right, Tegan, you're logged in, but I'd like for you to do your work. No, Imani, you are not. Not at all. I am happy to say. All right, so at the end of class, I am posting grades. So whatever is posted today is what will show up on the progress report. So all these assignments, I see a couple of submissions, so I'll get those checked before I submit. All right, so what I would like to do right now is share 2 videos with you, and then we'll look at the web page. Okay, 1 second.
Its answers are not reliable, and they are difficult to be fact-checked. It's just not meant.
Okay, not that one. Show this one first. All righty. All right, let me share. All right, so if I could have your attention just for the next few minutes, we are going to watch 2 short videos. Okay.
Practices are closely tied to the centerpiece of this whole water quality puzzle: pollutants. Some water pollutants are easy to see, like garbage, but the most serious pollution problems aren't as obvious. Sediment, nutrients, chemicals, pathogens. Sediment is simply soil. It's a valuable resource in a farm field.
Actually, I would like for you to write those down. Get it back to where she had it. Okay, write those down. Types of pollutants: sediment, nutrients, toxic chemicals, and pathogens. Vocabulary words, folks. So she's going to go through each one of these. Some of them you should be familiar with, and some maybe not so much. Okay. Sediments, nutrients, toxic chemicals, and pathogens.
Sediment is simply soil. It's a valuable resource in a farm field or along a stream bank, but it becomes a major problem when it's washed into waterways. At the root of the problem is erosion.
Erosion off of farm fields, construction sites where you don't have proper sediment control structures in place. You can easily have sediment eroded off of those landscape areas. You can have pasture areas that are overgrazed, animal access, cattle access directly to streams. With all of the trampling along a stream corridor, that exposes bare ground, which in turn exposes sediment to erosion. And then along all of our major rivers, if you don't have a lot of vegetation sort of holding the soil in place, stream banks can be a major source of sediment.
Why is soil so damaging when it's in water? It affects everything from the way water looks to what can live in it. Sediment can block sunlight, influencing what types of vegetation and species can thrive in that water. Sediment fills in waterways, affecting transportation and recreation. And sediment can be a carrier for other pollutants, like toxic chemicals, which attach to the sediment, making it a double threat. Next are nutrients, which pose an entirely different problem. Nitrogen and phosphorus are natural components of manure, human sewage, and decaying organic matter like leaves. They're also present in manufactured fertilizers. Nutrients are applied to farm fields to feed crops and to backyard gardens. They're used to green up golf courses and lawns. They become a problem when precipitation washes nutrients off the land and into waterways. Once they're in water, they do what they do on land: enhance plant growth.
When we have too much nitrogen in the water, your water tends to turn green and you get a lot of algae blooms. When those algae blooms finally die and the algae start to decompose, they take up all the oxygen in the water, and so there's a low amount of oxygen in the water, which causes problems for fish and plants because they need that oxygen.
Nutrients aren't just damaging to watery ecosystems, they also pose a real risk to humans. Nitrates, a byproduct of nitrogen, are especially dangerous.
When we have too much nitrogen in drinking water, for instance, babies, maybe infants under 6 months of age, can develop something called blue baby syndrome. And what that is their blood can't carry enough oxygen. And that can cause some health problems. And in fact, we may have older people or people who are in poor health that can also have that problem.
The risk is so serious that the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, tightly regulates the levels allowed in drinking water. Chemicals are another class of pollutants. Some chemicals commonly used in manufacturing, mercury, PCBs, lead, are toxic to the environment and humans when they reach certain levels. Because of the health risks these chemicals pose, the EPA carefully regulates industrial waste. Special permits govern the disposal of toxic chemicals, but spills, accidents, and improper disposal mean they still get into waterways. The problem isn't just industrial either. Think of the toxins around your own house: cleaners, paint thinners, pesticides, oil. Improper disposal of just 1 gallon of oil can impair 250,000 gallons of water, about the amount of water in this pool. Agriculture also relies heavily on chemicals like herbicides and pesticides. Their application needs to be carefully controlled to prevent contamination of water. The list of chemicals we use every day has grown faster than our knowledge of how they interact with the environment. Emerging contaminants, a buzzword in water circles, looks at chemicals not traditionally tracked like caffeine, over-the-counter drugs, antibiotics, and disinfectants. A study completed by the United States Geological Survey found levels of many of these contaminants in streams across the United States. Now, the real work begins to see what, if any, effects these chemicals have on water quality. Pathogens are probably the most serious threat to our health. Pathogens are disease-causing bacteria and viruses. They can come from human sewage or raw animal waste. If pathogens contaminate water and aren't eliminated during treatment, the tiny organisms can kill.
One of the real risks that anybody faces who treats water either to drink or, as we do, to make in a condition that can be returned to the rivers so fish and wildlife can use it and so other people can drink it, is killing certain kinds of viral infections or bacteria.
Alrighty, so that's the first one. Since 9/11, when I was in public school, I used to take field trips with my classes to the water treatment plant, and since 9/11, they don't let you do that anymore. They're scared you're gonna pollute the water system. But one of the interesting things that I learned in going to the treatment plant was that there is a certain level of pollution that they allow. And you would think that they don't allow any pollutants or pathogens in the water, but there's what they call a livable level of pathogens that they allow to stay in the water, and that did not make me that caused me to want to drink bottled water because I didn't like them saying that there's a certain level that they don't even worry about. So your municipal water is not as clean as you think it is. All right, the second one is on cleanup. So this is more like a news broadcast where we have so many rivers and things that are so polluted from human activity and things that we put into the rivers and the ocean that pollute, and then what dangers those cause. So watch this one. This one is also not so long.
In Baltimore, Maryland, these river cleanup devices have become local celebrities.
And we have Mr. Trash Wheel, Captain Trash Wheel, Professor Trash Wheel, and Gwenda the Good Wheel of the West here in Baltimore.
These 4 wheels are powered by the sun and the waves, and they're one of an increasing number of systems working to remove trash from waterways. Because while the public has become highly aware of the massive gyres of waste swirling in our oceans, we tend to hear less about how it all ended up there.
I wouldn't be surprised if the amount of plastics in all the rivers around the world is much more than all the plastics that is in the oceans.
Every year, it's estimated that up to 2.97 million tons of plastic enters the ocean through rivers, much of it originating from areas of the world that lack proper waste management infrastructure.
And then when it rains, it washes all of this trash through this water stream that ultimately ends up in the river, that ends up in the ocean.
And waste generation overall is only expected to increase in the years to come.
So in 2020, the waste that we generated was about 2.2 billion tons. And we're estimating that by 2050, we'll be generating about 3.9 billion tons.
The ultimate solution to the waste problem depends on some combination of better waste infrastructure, more sustainable packaging, less consumption, and public awareness around proper disposal. But in the meantime, there's a host of companies around the world developing systems to capture wayward trash from rivers.
Been averaging about 30 tons a month picking up trash from the waterways of Baltimore.
We currently have 4 types of interceptor deployed in 9 rivers.
We have cleaned a couple of rivers and maybe 10,000 tons of plastic stopped from reaching the ocean.
Heavy rains and winds often carry trash from the land to the rivers, a particular problem in low-income countries such as those in sub-Saharan Africa, where the majority of the waste generated is never even collected, especially in rural areas. And even when that waste is collected, it doesn't mean it's being properly disposed of.
In those countries, nearly 40% of waste is being collected, but then more than 90% is just being openly dumped or burned. So there's still that disconnect that even when waste is collected, it can still be dumped in more informal dump sites.
Waste from these informal dump sites often migrates into rivers, and middle-income countries like the Philippines, India, and Malaysia actually contribute the most to oceanic waste, as people have enough money to buy lots of packaged goods, but waste collection infrastructure still lags behind.
So that's why sort of in this middle ground is where you see most plastic leakage to the oceans, which tend to be areas in Southeast Asia, Central Africa, and Central America.
Of all the plastic that enters the ocean through rivers, nearly 80% is transported through 1,000 hyperpolluting rivers. That's according to a 2021 study funded by the Ocean Cleanup, the Dutch nonprofit founded in 2013 by then 18-year-old Boyan Slat. That's a lot more rivers than the Ocean Cleanup and other researchers had previously thought, as a 2017 study had indicated that a mere 10 rivers were the primary culprits.
The types of rivers that we now think contribute most to river plastic export into the ocean are smaller rivers flowing through urbanized areas rather than the typical very large river systems.
Van Emmerich helped co-author the 2021 study and says that the other primary finding is that the grand majority of plastic pollution never actually makes it into the ocean at all. So if the goal is to reduce the total amount of plastic in our environment, that makes it even more important to tackle plastic pollution closer to the source, as opposed to pulling it from the ocean after the fact. That's something that Clearwater Mills, the Ocean Cleanup, and the India-based company Alpha MERS are all trying to do.
Don't you just love these commercials?
Baltimore's googly-eyed trash wheels, the first of which debuted in 2014, are one of the original efforts to address river waste. Built by Clearwater Mills, the company's founder, John Kellett, was inspired to design the wheels after years of seeing trash pouring into the Baltimore harbor after big storms.
It comes from land sources. It comes from the streets, the parking lots, the alleys, the highways. And when it rains, it gets washed down the storm drains and into the small creeks and then into the rivers that feed the harbor.
Containment booms are set up in a V shape across the river, with rubber skirts that extend about 2 feet below the water's surface, with weights on the bottom. This catches trash floating downriver and funnels it towards the mouth of the rotating trash wheel, which is powered by the river's current and attached solar panels. As the wheel turns, it powers a conveyor belt that lifts trash out and deposits it into a dumpster.
And the dumpster's on a separate floating barge, and when that dumpster's full, we have another floating barge that we bring with an empty dumpster, take the full one out, slide the empty one in, and keep picking up the trash.
The 4 wheels have picked up a total of about 2,000 tons of trash and debris, including organic material like sticks and leaves, which actually make up the bulk of the weight, since plastic is so light. But that haul overall includes about 1.5 million plastic bottles, 1.4 million foam containers, and 12.6 million cigarette butts. Everything is then incinerated in a waste-to-energy facility. Installing a new wheel costs anywhere from $400,000 to $1.5 million and up, depending on local river conditions, waste infrastructure, and permitting expenses. Operating costs also vary widely, from $18,000 to over $100,000 per year. Though it can get pricey, Kellett says that solutions like this are cost-effective compared to the massive externalities incurred from plastic pollution in our waters, like the impact on marine life and microplastic contamination of food and drinking water.
What we're doing with plastics and the way we're dealing with them now has costs associated with it. You can't really keep doing what we've been doing, so how are you going to fund a new way of doing things?
3 of the wheels are owned and funded by the Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore, an NGO, and 1 is owned by the state government. Additional trash wheels are planned for Texas, California, and even Panama, where a local nonprofit, Maria Verde, has partnered with Clearwater Mills to build the 5th wheel in the family, named Wanda Diaz. This project is funded by the Benioff Ocean Initiative and the Coca-Cola Foundation, which together are supporting a portfolio of river cleanup projects around the world.
So we started the construction of the device of Wanda a couple of months ago. Clearwater Mills, their team, and even the creator John Kellett, they came down here to Panama to help us with the installation.
Wanda will operate on the Juan Diaz River. As one of the most polluted rivers in Panama, it sees a much heavier trash flow than Baltimore's rivers, especially after the first rains of the season. But Waterberg is confident in the technology.
So we are very hopeful that this will be a very big success for our country. But at the end of the day, this is not something sustainable. We cannot have thousands of projects like this running forever.
You know, the real solution to this problem is behavioral change, education, changing the way we're consuming goods.
The Ocean Cleanup is probably best known for its efforts to clean the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, an endeavor the company's young founder, Boyan Slat, started pursuing in 2013 after a TED Talk he gave on the topic went viral. Now, though, the company is pursuing a dual focus as it's built a series of river cleanup technologies.
Our goal is to rid the oceans of plastic, and the reason why we look at rivers is because we believe it's the fastest and most cost-effective way to prevent further plastic from being emitted to the ocean.
The Ocean Cleanup's first river cleanup device, called the Interceptor Original, was released in 2019. It's a fully solar-powered barge that operates much like Baltimore's trash wheels, just on a larger scale. Sitting at the mouth of a river, it funnels trash onto a conveyor belt and automatically distributes the waste across 6 giant dumpsters, which can hold over 17,000 cubic feet of trash. Where the trash goes after that depends on the country and the infrastructure that it has. Some is sorted and recycled, some is burned in waste-to-energy facilities, and some is landfilled. But since this giant interceptor doesn't fit in smaller rivers, the team developed another solution too.
That's why we also introduced now something called the interceptor barrier, essentially a barrier you put at the mouth of the river. We have an interceptor tender, which is a mobile conveyor belt, which then can scoop out the trash from these barriers, which we now applied in Jamaica, where the rivers are simply too narrow and too shallow to fit an original interceptor.
And for the most severely trash-choked rivers, the Ocean Cleanup is developing another solution called the trash fence, which it's piloting in Guatemala. The concept is simple. A 26-foot-high steel fence anchored to the bed of the river stops the flow of trash during a big storm. Then, after the water level recedes, excavators remove the waste. But the onslaught of trash in one of the world's most polluted rivers proved too intense for version 1.0.
The force of the trash was so high that the trash fence failed, unfortunately, so we're now working on version 2 that will hopefully be ready for the next rainy season.
Like Baltimore's trash wheels, costs are very location dependent, but Slot says that getting an interceptor up and running is generally a multi-million-dollar project, paid for by philanthropic donations, corporate partnerships, and local governments. 8 ocean cleanup interceptors are currently installed in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica. The trash fence in Guatemala is undergoing maintenance, and more cleanup devices are in the pipeline, including one in Los Angeles.
We'll be about 20 towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, and ultimately we hope to scale this sort of an exponential trend.
Oops.
In 1984, the Air Jordan was banned from the game. Nike could have paid a fine, but they didn't.
Okay, watch the movie.
India-based company Alphamers makes another version of a river barrier. With 34 installations in 8 different cities, this barrier is relatively low-tech and low-cost. It's much smaller than the Ocean Cleanup's trash fence, and not designed for the same extreme trash flow, but it's still pretty heavy-duty. Made of stainless steel mesh, the Alphamers fence floats a couple feet above and below the water level.
The hydrodynamics and the hydrostatics of this is very simple but excellent for the job. And it's made very rugged, very heavy duty with steel chains holding it on both sides. So it's able to withstand the monsoon flows immediately after the rain.
Shaker says his floating fence excels at stopping trash in rivers with fast currents, whereas designs that rely on a boom and a skirt might fail when currents pick up, since the water will instead run over the barrier, bringing trash with it. 8 floating barriers were deployed at various points along the Coolum River in Chennai in 2017, at a cost of about $125,000. And in their first year of operation, Shaker says they captured about 2,400 tons of plastic. The barriers are angled to direct trash towards the riverbank, where traditionally excavators have been used to pluck the trash from rivers, a cost not factored into the installation expense. But lately, Alphamers has been using conveyor belts, as Clearwater Mills and the Ocean Cleanup do.
Now we have started with the conveyor belts. So this one end is floating, one end is on the land. And now it's run with electrical power, with portable generators. But very soon we will run it with the flow of river water.
Shaker says the barriers are financed by municipal governments and corporations with social responsibility budgets. Well, in the future, he hopes to use AI to identify the types of waste being collected and where it originates from. For now, Alphamers is focused on its straightforward cleanup strategy.
We like to take the simplest solution and work upwards. And artificial intelligence and machine learning gets a last priority in our scheme of things.
As these various wheels, barriers, and fences are deployed in more locales around the world, it will become clearer and clearer what technologies are best suited to what environments. And given the magnitude of the waste problem, there's more than enough room for all the players in this space.
The goal is not to have 1,000 interceptors in the world, but to solve the top 1,000 heaviest polluting rivers. And any river that anyone else solves is one river less for us to worry about. So the more the merrier.
But all these organizations are well aware that these river cleanup systems are not the ultimate solution to our waste problem.
One of the things we're looking forward to is when trash wheels are no longer needed, when we're addressing the problem upstream to the extent where no trash is entering our waterway and we don't need to have a trash wheel.
Of course, financing waste cleanup, collection, and management around the world is a challenge. And Kaza says that the World Bank is always thinking about ways to incentivize citizens and governments alike to pay for long-term waste management solutions.
There are models where there's cross-subsidization. Wealthier communities pay a bit more than lower-income communities. We've seen models where people pay based on the volume of waste they generate, and we've seen waste fees increase over time as services are proven. That was very effective.
Funding models aside, though, Wattenberg emphasizes that the desire for change has to first come from the communities themselves.
If we don't change our habits, and if we don't work with communities, and if we don't look for alternatives and different solutions on land, this is not going to end. So we need people to come together as a community, as a country, with authorities, without authorities. We need everything. At the end of the day, funds are important, but we need to start with our will to do it.
Okay. And that last part, I mean, the The video was great, but the last part was the most important part. It's nice that we have all of these devices in place, but if we don't, and I need to stop sharing because where I want to switch, I'm in the grade book. Okay. So again, at the end of the video is the most important story, is that we have to change our habits. We have to stop putting stuff in the water so it doesn't have to be cleaned up out of the water. Andre made a lot of good points in the chat that that's a lot of trash that people are just mindlessly throwing into water system, or you might have thrown it on land and it washed into the water system. So the only way to get around having to have big devices like that is to change our human habits. It's not the animals that are doing that, it's us. So now we can, with the other types of pollutants with cattle and things of that nature, you do have to have different waterways where you water your cattle and farmlands and all of that. So that those kinds of waste getting into the water system are handled by your local water treatment plant. But those other things, that's a lot of pollution that we can reduce, that we have to be more conscious. So like she said, you need to come up with incentive programs to make people, like we kind of have it now where you can have two separate garbage cans, where one is where you put your recycled plastics things, and the other for your solid waste materials. So, but not everybody has bought into doing that. Like in my section, you have to pay for the extra recycle bin. So if you don't want to pay for, I'm looking up and down my street, not everybody has a recycle bin because it's not mandatory. So when it gets to the point where they not only invite you to recycle, but you actually buy into doing that, that's when we will look at really reducing the need for those big water cleanup devices. All right, so I'm assuming that you played the little bit. It's just a short little video on discussion of what is water pollution. And the big deal about it is the types of contaminants. So I had you write down the sediments. Lately, with them cutting trees down and building houses, they create situations where, and you might see where when they have housing development, they put these big plastic borders around the development. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So when it rains, all that land that they cleared to build the houses, that dirt's going to wash into your drains and is going into your water supply, because the drain leads to some local river. So it's going to pollute, take all that sediment to some local river, and that's where that goes. Andre said, poor little animals. Yeah, there's animals that live in these waters, and they probably sitting there, oh, here comes the dirt piled on top of their head. And then what they said too is we talked about photosynthesis some time back. You need light to get into the water. And if all of that dirt gets in, it's called turbidity. How clear the water is so that light can get through. If light's not getting through, then the plants in there are not photosynthesizing. They're not getting the oxygen that they need. They're not getting the nutrients that they need. So it does affect the living things in the water with the amount of pollution blocking the surface area. Let's see what else is say. Surface water. Acid rain. Somebody earlier said that they didn't think acid rain was a real thing. It's a real thing. And when it comes into the water supply, it makes the water supply acidic. And again, the poor little animals that are living in there, they're not designed to live in acid water, acidic water. So it kills them off. Pesticides, they said food that we create for the plants, and we think that's a good thing to grow the plants, but then when it rains, it washes that surface level pesticide off and it gets in our water supply. industrial waste. A lot of these companies cool their turbine systems, and some of these plants have toxic chemicals in it, and then the wastewater goes into your drinking water. So there's several things that we need to always be aware of. Groundwater, people who have well systems get contaminated from underground water when things seep through the soil, percolation of hazardous chemicals that seep through the soil, leaking and leaching. All right, there's two types of pollution that we need to be aware of: point source pollution and non-point source pollution. Point source means that we know we can point at it. We can put our finger on exactly where this pollution is coming from. So think of it that way. I can point at, this is where and that was the activity that you all did with the river. You can put your finger on where the pollution is coming from. Non-point pollution is you're not exactly sure where it's coming from, but you know it's in there. All right, so you want to look at all of the different point source places. So the city, when they say municipal, they mean the city, construction sites, and combined areas. So again, similar to the activity that you all had with the river. All right. Let's look at this last one here.
What is non-point source water pollution? When most people hear water pollution, they think of large pipes coming from cities and industries that release water into rivers, lakes, and streams. Today, these pipes aren't our biggest threat to clean water. Instead, we need to work on the most important source of water pollution, the water that flows over fields, lawns, parking lots, and even our own backyards. This water carries oils, chemicals, animal waste, and soil into our waterways. This is called non-point source pollution, and it's a big problem for all of us. Non-point source pollution has the largest impact on our water quality because it comes from everywhere. Many things we do each day can cause non-point source pollution. Imagine the small amount of pollution you create is multiplied by 6 million Hoosiers. Say your car drips 10 drops of oil every day. Now imagine 3 million cars drip 10 drops of oil, and that adds up to nearly 200 barrels of oil. One small problem makes a bigger difference than we think. Non-point source pollution starts with rainfall or snowmelt moving over and through the land. As this water or runoff moves along, it picks up and carries away natural and human-made pollutants from our parking lots, roads, yards, and construction sites. This water eventually flows through storm drains, small ditches, and even straight into our lakes, rivers, and streams. It can even get into underground sources of drinking water. Any chemical or debris washed into waterways by precipitation is considered non-point source pollution. Here are some of the more common causes of non-point source pollution: over-applying fertilizer, herbicides, and pesticides on plants, leaving oils, grease, salt, and other chemicals on parking lots, roads, sidewalks, and other hard surfaces, allowing loose soil to be washed away by the rain, leaving pet waste on the ground, not maintaining septic systems. Remember, it is the little things that we do every day that can help or harm water quality the most. Take a minute to do what is best for our water. Find out more about watersheds, non-point source pollution, and how to improve water quality by going to this website. It's your watershed, your home, your future.
Okay. One of the other things that people don't voluntarily do, they've asked, most communities have asked you if you have a pet and you're walking your dog, that you walk with your little baggie and or your little pooper scooper, and you don't leave, the pet remains out. You find a way to pick it up, throw it away. But not everybody does that either. So again, it's what we choose to do. And I said at the end, it's your future. So your generation has to develop some habits of, I'm going to make my future a better future, and make sure that people are doing what they need to do to maintain a cleaner environment. So um, are we going to go behind our dogs with the little baggie and scoop it up? All right. So again, we just had all that snow, and the city was all prepared because they had these big trucks and they spread all that salt on the roads. But when that snow melted and the ice melted, all that salt and chemicals, because it wasn't just salt, it was all these other chemicals that they put in there to cause the ice to melt faster. All of that gets washed into your drain and your water supply. So that adds to problems. So again, it's the things we do. Some of the things we do is for good reason, and then some of the things we do, we're kind of careless. It's like with the fertilizers, we want to have good plants. We want to keep the bugs and things off of the plants so that we have better crops. But then here comes the rain, it washes it off and it washes it into the water supply. So some of the things we do unintentionally, and some of the things that we can be more aware of what we're doing in order to reduce the amount of water pollution. All right, so make sure you go through the recap. I'm going to give you time to finish looking at this and then go through these different types. So there's different types: municipal, industrial, agricultural. And again, I'll let you do those and then do this activity with the matching. Now, I'm going to start, like I said, we're coming to the end of this unit. So I'm going to take the little matching activities that they have and create a test out of it. So that's where the test questions are coming from. So make sure you do those. Okay, again, we'll do a review on Monday of what you should do. All right, so make sure you finish reading through that, go through that matching activity. We still do have one other section on water pollution to go through, and we'll cover that more on Monday. So if you finish with one, go straight on to this and do the activity there as well. Okay, again, these are where the questions are going to come from for the test. All right, so this is the last unit. Okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to read through that yourself, play these videos on your own, and please do that. I'm going to be watching on GoGuardian to see that you're actually doing that. Some of you, like I said, still have some outstanding work. Grades are being posted this evening. So whatever's posted this evening is what's going to show up on the progress report. So if you need to use this time to do a missing assignment, please do that. Okay, so again, everybody needs to be reading, doing the matching activity, and going on to the next section. I'm going to check right now, Jayla. I'll let you know. I don't think so. You're not. I got a list. Jayla, you are not on it. So I'm going to assume that everything is good. All right. So again, I'm looking at GoGuardian and half of y'all looking at me. You should be in Canvas and you should be reading that page. Make sure you understand the difference between point source pollution and non-point source pollution. Again, knowing the source. For example, like she said, if you the water is the pollution is running into the street from the highway. Well, you can't say this car did it and that car did it. You had thousands of cars driving that highway that day. You don't know whose car is leaking oil. So that's non-point. You cannot point your finger on where that pollution actually came from. You kind of have an idea that it's the runoff from the highway, but it is non-point because you can't point to one individual source of pollution. Not like you can say it's coming from the farm, it's coming from the factory. That's point. Okay. All right. So again, I'm going to stop talking. You work on finishing up some things. I'm going to check the grade book and make sure everybody's stuff is up to date. Like I said, it's at the end of the day, grades are posted, and that's what's going on the progress report tomorrow.
Are closely tied to the
Hmm. Okay, so I have graded everything that has been submitted. Caleb, I see you doing everything but what you should be doing for environmental science. Um, Again, some of you are logged in for attendance purposes, but you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And I can't help it if you don't do what you're supposed to do. All right, so we got a few minutes left. If you have no questions for me, again, checking the grade book. Like some of y'all parents are not going to be happy with you, but they need to see how many zeros you have. And that's on you. They can't do it for you. I can't do it for you. All right. Thank you to the 75% of you who are doing great.